Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Michelle Mather, and I'm the founder of the Green Marketing Academy. Welcome back to our LinkedIn Live Spotlight series. We are picking up from our last episode was in June, and this is where we showcase change makers and leaders who are helping inspire climate activism and more sustainable and ethical marketing practices. Joining us today, we have Rebekah Mays, founder of One Generation. Welcome, Rebekah. And I'll hand it over to you to just do a quick intro of yourself to get us kicked off here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michelle. It's really great to be here and great to see, well, I can't see all of you, but to be here with you all live. And yeah, so I'm Rebekah Mays. I am the founder of One Generation, as Michelle said. And right now, One Generation is really a one-woman operation. So it's me doing everything, but essentially the way I think of it is a content marketing studio. And I'm right now mainly focusing on climate technology brands, B2B climate tech brands. And I offer different kinds of content services, but really the goal is to help them increase their brand awareness, improve their leads, and just generally help them grow their business through strategic content marketing. So, just to give you kind of a snapshot of the types of companies that I typically work with, these are right now mainly in the software space, actually, and they're involved in climate in some way, but mainly reducing emissions. So this is things like carbon accounting, companies that are measuring and managing their emissions. This could be in supply chain traceability, renewable energy software. So a lot of really cool industries. And then in terms of the kinds of services that I offer, it's really, as I said, in content. So this could be content strategy. So really helping companies think through what their goals are, document those goals, figure out the best approach to achieving those through content. And then I also help them implement the content. So this might be writing, LinkedIn content for a founder, or it might be writing the actual company content on their blog to improve organic traffic, creating downloadable assets, things like that. So that's really the work that I do in a nutshell.
Great, thank you. And I want to mention too that you had, when was that? 2 years ago now that you came into the Green Marketing Academy and taught our students more around SEO and content marketing. And that was super valuable. And I'm sure a lot has changed. So maybe we'll have time to talk a little bit about that today. But I'd love to ask, and before I get into our questions, if people are joining live and have questions for us, feel free to type in the comments in the chat and we'll get to those at the end. And if you're watching the recording of this and have questions, do the same and we'll make sure that we get back to you because we'll both be alerted when a comment is posted. So first, Rebekah, tell us a little bit more about your why. Why do you do this work and how did you get into it? Where did your journey lead you?
Yeah, so I think a lot of us have, kind of two things that we're thinking about when we're thinking about our work. One is we need a livelihood, we need a way to provide for ourselves and our families, but we also want the work to be meaningful. And so this was definitely something. These were two things I was thinking about. I discovered copywriting and content marketing, I think it was maybe 7 years ago now, and really was excited to find them because it was a way to use kind of the English language skill that I had been developing in school. I studied English literature. I taught English as a second language abroad, did some communications internships for some human rights orgs. And when I kind of found copywriting, it was just a really practical way to use those skills. Started working in that space and getting some different jobs, kind of learning on the job as well, and spent several years doing this. And I was working with a really cool wellness organization. So I was helping with the meditation app and doing some content strategy for them. And I really enjoyed that, but I just started feeling more and more like I really wanted to work specifically on environmental issues and specifically on the climate crisis because we all know there's a lot of different issues that we're facing in the world. Like, we got war, we got so many environmental crises, but with climate change specifically, there's such a clear time horizon associated with that. And we really have a narrow window of opportunity to act to avoid a catastrophe for, many, many generations to come. And so that was something that was just becoming more and more clear that it was really, kind of one of the biggest crises of our time. And so I wanted to get more involved in it. Didn't, know exactly how to do that, but I decided to go full-time freelance and work for myself so that I could really decide, who are the clients I want to be working with, what are the kinds of projects I want to be focusing on. And when you work for yourself, you can basically decide, what you want to do and what you want to say yes to and what you want to say no to. So that's what I did. So this was a little more than 2 years ago now. I went full-time freelance, and it's been quite a journey, kind of discovering and learning how to grow a business. It's not as easy as some people make it sound, but I ended up finding kind of B2B within, kind of the early days of growing the business and realizing, okay, this is a good fit for my interest in content marketing. They typically value the kind of work that I do. And then climate technology came after that. And so really the past year I've been focusing on the industry that I'm targeting right now, and have just been, each project I'm learning more and more, and it's really gratifying to be able to focus on exactly the kind of work that I've been wanting to do, and also really working to, be careful about the kinds of companies that I'm working with, because on one hand, and I'm not even just talking about like greenwashing or something like that, but we all have limited time. So like, where can I make the biggest impact? And with some companies that I'm working with, they're working with really major corporations, and companies where if they make a change, then the impact is huge. So it's really exciting to be able to just kind of take charge of that for myself, and deciding who I want to work with, and really doing my best to support the best companies I can.
Yeah. Well, I hear you on the challenges of owning a business, the blessing and the curse of getting to pick and choose who you work with. Not always we have that luxury, but
Sure.
on the B2B side, because I'm more B2C focused, I always enjoy catching up with you, because greenwashing and we won't well, maybe we'll get into it, but it's very different from B2C versus B2B. And just here in the US too, and I'm sure it might be similar in Europe, but just there's so many layers to different corporations and businesses. And sometimes you're working with a quote green climate tech company, but they're owned by a national conglomerate that maybe is a funder of fossil fuels. And it can be complicated. So, but yes, an aside, what would you say is your personal mission and vision of One Generation?
Yeah. So the mission, I would say, is to elevate brands that are driving decarbonization, and to do that through strategic content marketing. So I would say I'm doing that right now, which is really exciting. And by elevating, I mean really supporting them on the marketing front and helping them achieve their goals. And in terms of the vision and kind of the longer term thinking, this is obviously still in the works of what all it will look like in the future. But what I would like is that the company could really, play a role in accelerating the path to net zero, which we really need to achieve by 2050. But to do that by helping grow the companies I'm working with and the strategic partners I'm working with, not just in terms of customers, but really helping them grow their whole business from the customers and attracting new business, but also attracting new talent and attracting investors as well. And so those are kind of the three things that I'm thinking about, that content and just helping them build their brand. Content can drive all of those things and really becomes a growth lever for the company, which is really exciting. But, it is a big vision. And so it's not really something that I can do on my own. So I'm hoping as time goes on, and as I kind of get more established, that I can build more of a team to support me on the skills that I don't have. So, I'm not a graphic designer, I'm not a videographer, but I would love to be able to bring in the talent who can do all those things and help make the impact bigger. So that's kind of where I'm seeing it go in the future.
Yeah, and thanks for putting that ask out there, because I know maybe there's people listening or watching this later, but we have such an incredible network here on LinkedIn or YouTube or just within my own network. So if you ever need recommendations, happy to, connect you with people always. And I appreciate the connections that you've brought to me or to the Green Marketing Academy over the years too, because we're all working towards the same goal ultimately. So Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I always like to ask this question for those of you watching. Most of you may be familiar with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but which of those goals are you specifically focused on? And could you provide a little more explanation as to why you're focused on that area?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, this was something I hadn't really identified before this conversation. So I really appreciate this question because I was like, oh, let me really think about this. So I would say the number one is really number 13, which is climate action. So, for those who aren't familiar, it's taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And, that just totally aligns with the mission I have. And I would say right now, I'm really focused more on reducing emissions more than removing carbon, which is also, I think, also has a role. And the research I've seen shows we need finance to be flowing into, nature-based carbon removals and tech-based carbon removals. But reducing emissions is really the lion's share of the work we need to be doing right now. So that I would say is the number one goal. And then we do touch on a number of the other goals. So one, for example, was industry innovation and infrastructure, which is building resilient infrastructure, promoting sustainable industrialization. And I would say we support this as well because some of the clients that we're working with, their clients and their customers are in these heavily emitting industries, like manufacturing, like logistics and transportation. And again, it's exciting to be, on one hand, you might think, oh, well, that's it's maybe sounds dull or something, but when you think about the impact that those industries can have when they start to adopt, more sustainable building materials, for example, or a fleet of trucks is switched from diesel to electric, like this is huge. And so, if we're already making these impacts now, it can have a huge effect down the line. So yeah, and energy is another area that we're involved in terms of renewable energy. So I would say that climate action is the number one.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is even a bigger scale. And I don't mean to dilute B2C and, products and widgets and things that we buy, but these are the infrastructure of travel and transportation. So it's things that operate around us that we don't even think about on a day-to-day basis. They're just there and they have such a greater impact, I would say. Speaking of impact, what do you feel is your greatest impact when it comes to encouraging more sustainable marketing practices?
Yeah. So I would say my role, and I would say I'm not like a green marketing expert like you are, Michelle, or I know probably some of the audience is, but I think where the values that I probably bring to the table are definitely one is backing up claims and content, which is, I think I think B2B tends to be better about this than like direct brands. So it's already something that, the best B2B brands are thinking about, like when you're making, you're putting out a white paper, or you're putting out articles, you want to be finding reliable sources of information and, backing up claims, whether it's about your service or just the education around your services. So the role that I play often is helping find those sources of information and include those in the content we're writing. I think it can also go apply to like actually writing the copy about the service, but I tend to not be as involved in that aspect. And then I think the other thing is probably just transparency in general and really encouraging companies to be thinking a little bit more holistically about like how are we treating our audience and the users, and getting a little bit out of this kind of us versus them mentality when it comes to competitors. And I think I'm seeing, and we're all seeing kind of hopefully a shift from a little bit less of the kind of cutthroat competition to a little more collaboration. And I think there's nothing wrong with healthy competition. It can help us improve and be better. But I really like it when I see companies kind of acknowledging competition and saying, okay, well, they might actually be a better fit for you, prospect, than me in this respect because of you have this specific need that I don't serve, and just being more honest with customers about that. So that's something that is important to me that I try to promote. And even when in things like content, kind of acknowledging, hey, this is the source of this information, or this was the inspiration for the content that we're doing, and just being less afraid to talk about talk about, where we are in the landscape of all the choices that our customers have. So I think that's just ethical, right? It's just a better, I think, more satisfying way of doing business. So it's something I think about and something I'm hoping to support more and more. And then I think I'll probably be getting more into this stuff as I, maybe bring on a graphic designer or a videographer. A lot of the stuff I do is writing, but I think I'll have to, be more careful about like, well, what's the file size and what's, what kind of video content are we doing? And, maybe is audio better? Those kinds of things. So yeah. That's how I'm thinking about it right now.
Yeah. And transparency, I always get asked, how transparent should we be? And the answer is always, I don't want to say it depends, because that's not really a helpful answer, but you have to start somewhere, and you'll learn from your audience, your customers, your clients over time if there's more questions behind that. And I always encourage people, if you're launching a specific campaign, whether it's product or service based, ask your audience, put the messaging out there that you have, the best information that you have at the time with data sources and whatnot, but ask them, what questions do you have around this? Because that's going to help better educate the business on what content they should be putting out too. So yeah, thanks for honing in on that. Lastly, tell us more about how our audience at the Green Marketing Academy, LinkedIn, YouTube can help support you and get connected and stay in touch with you.
Yes. Well, thank you for asking that. So I always am looking for good resources, to just keep growing as, a business owner, as a person, as I would say also, hopefully one day a leader in terms of building a business that's not just about, I want it to be profitable and successful kind of from an outward perspective, but also building a business that, people would want to work with, want to work for also. So any kind of good books you have or, resources you have to recommend there, I'm always curious to hear. And in terms of kind of staying connected, I'm pretty darn active on LinkedIn. So you can definitely find me there. I'm posting most days of the week there. So you can follow my personal profile. And I'm not super active on the One Generation profile, but who knows, maybe I'll be doing more with that page as time goes on. But you could definitely follow me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I can attest to that. You're someone that I look up to when it comes to LinkedIn content and inspiration, and I'm trying to get more consistent with it, but you're really championing that. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Well, that's, I think, how we met, that's how I've made a lot of connections with is by, just getting out there on LinkedIn and meeting a lot of really, really cool people. So it's brought a lot to me in the business for sure.
Yeah. Thank you for being a thought leader there as well. And I don't think you mentioned, but tell us where you're based. And I know you work with companies all over the world, but that might be good for our audience to know.
Yeah. So I'm from the U.S. I'm from Austin, Texas originally, but I'm based in The Hague in the Netherlands. So it's not Amsterdam, but it's close. And so that's where I'm based. But I do serve clients. I've got some clients in Europe, some clients in North America, US, Canada, potentially other countries are in the pipeline. So it's fun to be working in kind of a global level for sure.
Awesome. And we do have a question that came through before we conclude from Davey. And it says, David Attenborough, big fan, in 2020 said, saving our planet is now a communications challenge. We know what we do. We just need the will. As a content strategist, do you agree with that? And how can we rise to the challenge?
Yeah. So I love David Attenborough, of course. I think one of the things is that, yes, I do think it is a communication challenge, but I think it's also, there's a lot of emphasis on personal responsibility, which, I think it's all important if we all take an active role, in finding what role we can play. But I think it's also important to find ways that we can push the really heavy emitters and the big corporates and governments to take action on our behalf. And so that's why I'm thinking in terms of, working with B2B companies and, I could have an impact, but it's going to be pretty small if I'm just kind of working on my own individual level. But if I can use kind of communication skills and content strategy skills to have this bigger impact, to me, that's a big success. So I think it's, balancing those things, but I definitely think content strategy and communication plays a huge role in that. I haven't gotten as much into policy, but I know that in terms of, all of the dialogues that happen, every year at these big conferences, there's a lot of negotiation that needs to happen. And so right now I'm not involved in there, but I think that's where a lot of the decisions get made. And so if we can figure out how to influence that space as content strategists, I think that's something that I'm thinking about. So haven't yet figured that out, but trying to learn and trying to do what I can to influence the big corporations for the better.
Yeah, exactly. I'd personally like to see this be just a larger priority, not only at those conferences, but just in mainstream communications on a daily basis. So that's just a personal opinion. Yes.
Definitely.
Well, thank you again for joining us. I was very excited to have you back on, and I have no doubt in my mind, Rebekah, that you are going to grow your team, and we'll look back a couple of years from now. And I'm really excited to be a part of your journey of growth and see where you are a couple of years from now. But yeah, thank you again.
Thanks so much. Well, and you've been a huge inspiration to me too. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And yes, we'll be publishing an article with all this information as well, for those of you that prefer to just, digest your information in more of a written form. But thank you all for joining us today. If you have questions, like I said, feel free to drop them in the comments after the fact, and we'll get back to you. And we'll be back next month with our next guest. So thanks all for joining, and have a great rest of your day.